This is the LFC Daytrippers. I'm Gav, and with me I have got Phil and Keith, and we've teamed up with bookmakers.com TV to rank Liverpool managers back from Shankly right through to the present day with Jurgen Klopp. There's been 11 permanent managers of Liverpool since 1959. Ronnie Moran has been in there as a caretaker coach. Kenny Dalglish has been in there twice. We're not going to include Ronnie Moran, but we're going to put Kenny's two stints together. The managers have been Shankly, Paisley, Fagan, Dalglish, Souness, Evans, Houllier, Benitez, Hodgson, Rodgers and Klopp. So what we're going to do is we're going to have a little chat about it. We're going to rank them from 11 to 1. We're going to argue about it and see who comes out on top. Phil, I think it's going to be easy enough to pick number 11 out of all those. So
I had to think about it.
You couldn't have had to think about it.
I did.
Okay, so who did you come up with? After a long thought, who did you come up with?
It was only when you told me that Dalglish was only gone in once. That's where I could stop thinking then. Because his second period at the club was awful.
Okay.
Let's be straight about it, right? But so on that basis, then it ended up being Hodgson. But Houllier was a close second to me. But yeah, Hodgson, yeah.
That's your deep disdain for Gerard Houllier. Setting in already. Keith, it's Hodgson number 11, isn't it?
Yeah, it's Hodgson.
Out of the way quick.
Yeah, it's the easiest selection we're going to have in the whole thing. I think he's the worst Liverpool manager we've ever had, even going beyond Shankly and going back to the black and white days when he played football with a cow's heart. This fella lowered expectations to where, defeat was becoming acceptable. And, even if you go back before Bill Shankly, we were relegated and, we didn't have the best of times before that. Everything from Shankly, you could make a case, was an upward trajectory. Roy Hodgson was an unmitigated disaster. He was ran out of town after 6 months, and I think even that was generous. So I think he's the worst manager we've ever had. I think he's one of the worst managers English football has ever seen. But that could be just blinkered by his Liverpool stint for me. But yeah, definitely number 11, Roy Hodgson.
Okay, number 11.
The only thing I say, Gav, is I reckon if Hodgson had been around in 1892 as the club was being founded when they kicked everybody out of Anfield, he probably would have said, "No, we'd be better off building houses here instead."
Yeah.
But
Roy Hodgson, of course, has given us that moment where he had a massive row with Watford's mascot, and then a few years later took over at Watford. So I'd say that was awkward when he was coming in the door at the time.
And the greatest picture of all time for walking with intent, when him and Sammy Lee were walking with intent from the dugout.
Yeah. Listen, I can't talk about him anymore. Hodgson is definitely number 11 in the list. I'm going to throw Graham Souness in as number 10. And the reason being is he takes over in 91 after Ronnie Moran has that caretaker spell. He comes with a massive reputation from Rangers after he's won how many titles in a row up there. He arrives in the door and he pulls the squad apart. He sells the likes of Staunton, Beardsley, Houghton, and he brings in absolute rubbish. Bar, you could argue maybe Mark Wright, who has a bit of a career at the club, but everything else around him for me is rubbish. And he leaves in 94. He does win the FA Cup in 92. But for me, Graham Souness just set the club back so many years in what he tried to do too much, too quick, and done it badly. Souness would be my number 10. Anyone want to disagree?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
I think Rodgers, Brendan Rodgers, I think was absolutely hopeless as well. He gave us a great season, but I'm not really putting it down to Brendan Rodgers. And I think what happened after that and what subsequently has happened to Brendan Rodgers' career, I think he's a snake oil salesman who maybe struck lightning in a bottle a couple of times and never capitalised on it. I think Graham Souness certainly wasn't the best Liverpool manager, and I do agree with everything you said. The squad work that you had to do there wasn't very productive, but for me, he won an FA Cup, and it was the start of our decline. But Brendan Rodgers for me was just absolute con man.
He wins the FA Cup, but he should push on from there. But he just dismantles everything. He gets lucky winning the FA Cup for me in 92. He gets Sunderland in the final, and he's just in the middle of tearing this club apart. And we talk about United in the early 90s and building. He just took us and threw us threw the car in reverse. It took us like years to recover from it, and that's why I feel a bit sorry for managers that kind of follow them. Phil, who would you got number 10?
I think it's fairly tough. I genuinely do. Like I'd have Houllier there. I'd have Souness there. I've Rodgers there, agree with Keith in terms of where it is. And Dalglish is there for me as well, because I can't separate his second period at the club
you have to
his first period at the club, right? I can't, because you told me we can't, so there's no two Dalglishes, there's only one, so I have to.
Yeah.
You have
so
to take
overall,
it as
Dalglish in 2 spells wins 3 leagues, 2 FA Cups, and a League Cup. You can't put him down with Rodgers and Souness.
I'll go with. Well, see, the other thing is though, when Souness takes over, they come very close to winning the league when he takes over at the club, right? They look like title contenders in his second season. Before it all goes, Pete Tonga, they finish 6th, but they win the FA Cup. The biggest stain on Souness's piece with the fans that took such a long time to finish was the interview he recorded in that certain tabloid, right? So that really. That turns the fans against them. And unlike most Liverpool managers to then, once you get the fans offside, it's a very short leash. And that's what happened. There was no... If he hadn't have done that, I think there would have been a greater level of patience from the fans in terms of what he's trying to achieve. Because the one thing I will say about Souness, as you said it, he tried to change too much too soon. But there was very little for him to work with when he came in. They dismantled the reserve team. There was no U program in place at that stage, right? The boot room was only known by name. It wasn't like that there was a legacy or an academy that was sitting at the club, and he has to rebuild that from scratch in terms of what's there. So I'm not going to start to say, yeah, but the whole period as a whole, it's the worst period outside of the Hodgson period as a Liverpool fan. And he wins the FA Cup, I agree with you, but you can't dismiss then what happens after the FA Cup and the whole fallout with the fans as well. And I love Graeme Souness as a footballer. I vaguely remember him playing, but when I look back and see him playing, he was an absolute monster as a centre midfielder for Liverpool before he leaves. So it's not that, and I've enjoyed him as a pundit as well, and like he has come out and apologised for that interview that was done. But it's such a pity, because I think, as I said, had he kept the fans on side, there would have been an awful lot of patience given to him and afforded to him, because he could have given the spin as to why he had to do what he had to do. Because as we talk about the rest of them, every other manager that comes after him is given time to do what he needs to do or say that he needs to do.
Okay, so I've gone with Souness. Keith's gone with Rodgers. Would we be all okay if we put Rodgers at 10 and Souness at 9?
No.
He wants to.
Yeah, he wants to.
I've an argument about Rodgers, right? That as much as he messes up, that one season in 13-14 is the catalyst to everything that's gone on since. It's the one thing that's given the fans belief in the best part of 20 years that we could contend properly for a title.
But then he does his best to take it all back.
Yeah.
And when he gets a chance to walk away from it and go, listen, brilliant 13-14, 14-15, I think you lose Suarez, Sturridge. Hodgson actually does Sturridge on England duty, but he just not following what Liverpool have told him to do. And it's a disaster. But when he loses 6-1 away at Stoke, he should walk. As a Liverpool manager, he should walk. And then he nearly, for me, he completely tarnishes his Liverpool thing. Because I'll tell you now, I can't stand the man now.
I get that.
Are we going to rank this?
I'm going Souness 10, right? And then if you want, you could twist my arm on Rodgers at 9.
Right, we go Souness at 10, and we're going with Rodgers at 9. Okay, so I had Roy Evans at 8. Okay, takes over from Souness. Yeah, it's a bit of a car crash. Plays good football. Liverpool are way too soft though. They play decent football, but they pass for the sake of passing at times.
Amazing football.
No, they pass for the sake of passing for me. But then when they get Collymore and especially when they get Collymore and Fowler together, they open up a bit. McManaman, they open up in a big way. But they've just a soft underbelly, and that's what kills them in league chases in, I want to say 95, maybe 97. And he wins a League Cup in 95 against Bolton. But I think when you look at the pedigree above him from here, I know it's ranked 8. But when you look at the pedigree above him, I think that's just where he sits in this. Keith?
Yeah, Roy Evans, he was a great ambassador for Liverpool. He was a great servant for Liverpool. He was there through it all. And when he got the gig, he was a nearly man. He did have a great team. And when you look back at it, they played some excellent stuff. But I don't know, when they brought in Phil's mate Houllier, I think that was the death knell for Roy Evans. And it's probably not his fault that it ended the way it did. But to me, I have him way down on the list. Unfortunately, I'm
going to make a plea to you both.
Yeah.
If you let me put Evans in, I actually have Houllier at 7. So without us going around the houses here, if you give me Evans at 8, I'll let you go at Houllier at 7. How does that sound? Because Phil's dying to get to this fella because he just cannot stand Gerard Houllier.
I hate
So can we have Evans at 8?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm happy with Evans. I had Evans ranked low. So where are we now? We've got Hodgson at 11. We've gone with Souness at 10.
Hodgson at 11, Souness at 10, Rogers at 9, Evans at 9. 8, and I have Houllier at 7.
Phil,
I left Phil open, yeah, because I'm good.
I knew I wouldn't. I knew I wouldn't win having him higher up the list, right? Because you lads will just talk about trophies and stuff like that. But I'll be straight with you, right? I never think of any joyous moments with Houllier as manager.
Right, they've won a treble in 2001, Phil.
None of it was enjoyable. None of it was enjoyable.
We had some great times watching it, I have to say.
I didn't go back and watch the games. It's a horrible
Turgid,
long ball, turgid, disgusting football.
The UEFA Cup final wasn't.
But that's because it went mental.
Yeah, that was
an accident.
Crazy, yeah, it wasn't. Right? Yeah, okay, probably was an accident.
We're not giving Gerard Houllier any credit for that one.
The best period of football under Houllier was when Phil Thompson was managing the team when he was ill. That was the best. That was the best period of time to watch Liverpool as a
They went on a great run as well.
They did.
Yeah.
Honest to God, after that, before that, and after that, they never, ever, ever looked like a Liverpool team. So he may have gotten the club back into a position where they were contending for domestic honours and playing well in the UEFA Cup, but they never looked like they were going to do anything in the Champions League, and they never looked close. Even though I think they finished runners-up once, they never looked close to winning a league title. They remind me of that time that was it Mourinho finished second with United to Guardiola, and he was about 4,000 points behind Manchester City. Yeah. And it's like it never had that feel. Arsenal won the league that year, and I think we finished runners-up, and we never looked close. Never at one stage put any pressure on them at all. I think we finished second with 60 points or something like that. It was back in the
no, with Houllier, I think we finished second in I want to say 03, 04. No, earlier than that. 01, 02. In Elka's at the club.
And then, we bring in El Hadj Diouf.
But I think we finished with about 80 points. But Arsenal win it comfortably.
I don't know if it was that high, because if you go back and look at the old league winning totals, 80 points probably guarantees.
No, it was a fairly high. It was a fairly high number we had. It's a fairly high number we had.
40.
Keith, Houllier, I get where Phil's coming from. I think when he comes in, the one thing I will say from him is when he comes in, he identifies that soft underbelly and he decides that's not enough. And he wants big, strong players and he wants to be physical. Now, he does do a lot of back-to-front football. He works off the fact that he gets Heskey in, about a year and a half into his tenure, and he focuses on Heskey playing off Owen and they can hurt people in a big way. But you probably don't see the best of some players under Houllier. He does win that treble. He wins the League Cup in 2003 when they beat United in Wales, in Cardiff. Yeah. But I think even at that stage, the writing's kind of on the wall. I remember going to UEFA Cup games and it wasn't good for Houllier. When they were in the UEFA Cup, it wasn't good for him and people wanted him out. And I think it was just a case of, yes, you got us this far with that sort of football. But when you look at the kick on, you look at to be entertained a bit more, and it just plateaued at that, didn't it?
Yeah, it did. It went stale very quick. But I think it's very fair that he's rated ahead of maybe the others that we spoke to because of the trophies that he won. But the football, Phil is right. It was terrible. When you look back at it and you look at the style, and even when it was good, it wasn't attractive football. And you think of the players that would have come through in that era. And I don't know if you can blame Houllier, you know what I mean? But players that you maybe would have expected a bit more from and it didn't work out. But I just, there was for a year or two before he went, there was a lot of people saying, get him out. Do you know what I mean? It had really gone sour there at Liverpool for Houllier, and the heart attack, we got a lot of sympathy for that, but it was just never really the same. And when you think like that we were looking for something more attractive and went for Rafa, that tells you maybe the style of play that Houllier was serving up. But he did, as you said, Gav, he spotted the soft underbelly there. He went in and he brought a level of professionalism to the team, similar to Arsene Wenger did at Arsenal, that he maybe brought that continental attitude and training and dietary stuff, all that sort of gear, brought that in. That Liverpool were way behind on, let's be honest. And so I do give him credit more so than the Rodgers and Roy Evans of this world. But yeah, he's definitely no higher on the list than where he's going to be.
Right. Well, that's Houllier in at 7. Phil, who would you have at 6?
This is a toss-up, and this is a very tight toss-up for me. This is it's either Dalglish or Benitez, right? Okay. And I go back to Dalglish, Sully, and his legacy with that period that he has, where he comes in as a caretaker and should have just ran for the hills after the caretaker bit, right? Because if he does that, perfect. You know, when something is just that perfect little shot in the arm that everyone needed after Hodgson, get you over the line, get you to where you need to go, and everyone's just going king, magical, right? However, there's that bit, and then there's what comes out that season that comes after. It's terrible in terms of what happens until we sign, and he picks up Charlie Adam from a chipper and drops him off the thing for a fitness test and what have you, right? But if you go back to the 80s, and I was blessed to have witnessed this, I remember the double winning side when he was player manager. But most importantly, those teams from 86 to 89, the John Barnes, the John Barnes, Peter Beardsley, John Aldridge, the midfield with Steve McManaman, Jan Molby, Ronnie Whelan, just this. It had everything, right? So the football that he was playing now is the type of football that people watch today. That had the same level of pressure that was going on, and it was the only thing that was different was obviously the back pass rule hadn't come in, so you're able to just knock it. When you went 1-0 up, you could just go back to your goalkeeper and just spend your whole time playing ones and twos with him, right? But for me, that is why I would have Benitez here as opposed to Dalglish. And that was probably a long-winded way of getting to Benitez, but for me, that's why I'd rank Dalglish above Benitez. Benitez comes in here because I think Benitez was promise without fulfillment. Right, he does win a Champions League, but that's the peak. I know 08-09 there's a great title run in terms of what it is, but that first year with a team that is his weakest team in his whole time he's here is the peak of his achievement, instead of it being the stepping stone that it really should have been to either win the league or winning another Champions League. And we do come close. I know we come close again, and he takes us to another Champions League final, but it just was that unfulfilled. Yeah, it was just that unfulfilled promise. If he wins the league in 08-09, he's definitely above Dalglish because of where he's had to come from. But he's still, like, Dalglish takes over as player manager, the best team in England with the best squad in England, right? And
well, Everton are champions when he takes over.
I know, but we dominated up, like we're going to talk about Fagan and Paisley, right? But they dominated up until then, right? You always have your odd rival in terms of what's there, and continues that on and continues in the vein, but rebuilds his team after 85, 86, which is the most impressive thing that Kenny Dalglish does. He fully rebuilds the team and gets them probably the best iteration of what they had over 10 years. But for me with Benitez, you're right. He wins the Champions League, but then rebuilds a very good team. But I think ultimately Benitez himself, right? He overthought games when and showed too much respect to teams which ultimately cost him. So you go back to the 08-09 season and you look at all those draws against Birmingham, Wigan and stuff, and it was all this. He was so tactically aware that it actually tied him up in circles an awful lot of time and ultimately cost him a league title. That for me is why Benitez goes in at 6 and it isn't up higher.
I'd have Benitez at 6 as well. I agree. I think, he comes in 2004 and you see, Alonso arrives, Garcia arrives, and further on down the line you see Torres and stuff like that. But he wins that European Cup and he shouldn't. He's no right to. Right, but he does. He wins the FA Cup the following season, and you're thinking, you know the way you see managers nowadays where you go like Tuchel wins a European Cup with Chelsea, and it's just it's all downhill from there because he's literally set a level for himself that they will now expect. Yeah. Whereas if Benitez had got to a semi-final of the European Cup and then won an FA Cup the following season, and then built it, and where you went, even in 08-09, you go, he's close. But then he gets himself tangled up with the owners, and the owners are appalling, don't get me wrong. But he gets himself tangled up with that. He's getting himself tangled up with the likes of Ferguson, who Ferguson knows Benitez is coming for him. But Ferguson just distracts him so well by just making mad stuff up, and Benitez bites. But a European Cup and an FA Cup does put him up there off what the base he was coming in off. But I still think I'd have him at 6. Keith?
Fagan for me at 6. And simply just because of the brevity maybe of his reign. He wins trophies, but I think at that stage
he wins a league title, a European Cup, and a League Cup.
Yeah, well, lads, can I just Keith, just to sort of act as devil's advocate to that thoughts process, right? he wins the first domestic treble.
Yeah, no. And look, I've no issue with what he won, but my argument for Fagan is the team nearly was looking after itself at that stage. Do you know what I mean? So Shankly builds her up, hands her over to Paisley, and even at that stage, Paisley's just continuing on what Shankly had started. When Fagan comes in, I think it's a case of, you're talking about a team of winners. You're talking about a multi-European Cup winning side at that stage. And I think the job he done, well, not trying to diminish it at all, it's brilliant. I just think he was there for a short period of time. He carried on the team as it was. So I would put him in 6th for that reason. I would put Rafa maybe in 5th because I agree. I think Rafa did get himself tied up, but the situation around the league, around Liverpool itself when Rafa came in, was maybe a harder one to navigate for him. So I'd flip them too. I'd have Fagan in a 6 and Rafa in a 5, but I'm happy to go with the majority on this and put Rafa into 6.
I had 6 Benitez, Fagan 5. That's what I had. Phil, do you want to switch her over and go with Keats?
No, Benitez at 6 because I thought Dalglish at 5.
Okay, so 6.
You had Dalglish at 10, so I'm surprised he's made it up.
He's coming through the pack here. By the end of it, you'll have a Dalglish tattoo. So we go 6 and 5, right? Now, I have Klopp at 4. So let me make my argument and then you can tear me apart, right?
Hold on.
I think the job Jurgen Klopp has done at Liverpool is phenomenal. Again, from the base he's had up to now. I maintain that he's the best football manager Liverpool have had since Paisley. I maintain that. And then you probably look at me going, well, why is he at 4? He's there 7 years. He's won every trophy he can win once. He's won an FA Cup, he's won a League Cup, World Club Cup, Super Cup, League, European Cup. He's won it all. I'd have him at 4 though because I think the 3 above him, for different reasons, have had a bigger effect on Liverpool Football Club. And listen, I'm open to being pulled apart. We're 22 minutes in here, so we probably have about 5 minutes left, right? So I'm going to let you decide this because I probably think I'm wrong in that, right? Yeah. But my arguments before you, I'm not going to let you decide the top 4 as the guests, right? But I would have Paisley at 1 because in 9 years he wins 6 titles, 3 European Cups.
Hang on. You can't go that way. You can't start do a countdown show.
No. I'm going to tell you what I would have. But then I'm going to let you tear it apart because I know Klopp and 4 is going to work.
The worst person top the pops. Right? Number 8 is saying.
I'd have Shankly at 2. I'd have Shankly at 2 because just where he takes the club from 59 up to 74, 3 titles, 2 FA Cups and UEFA Cup in that time. But it's not only that, he rebuilds Liverpool from the very bottom to the top. And I'd have Dalglish at 3. Dalglish wins 3 leagues, 2 FA Cups, player manager as well, and a League Cup in 2012 in a second stint. But I think Dalglish always, in my mind, pushes himself right to the top, not only because of the manager he was at Liverpool, but what he dealt with Hillsborough just puts him right up there for me. Like, I mean right up there. And that's not to disparage Klopp in any way. I just think in that circumstance you have to take that into consideration. But that would be my top 4. But I'm quite happy for you two to mull her over and give me the top 4 because I'll happily stand aside because that Klopp in 4 show, it probably is a bit ridiculous.
Keith, I'd prefer to do a normal countdown where we don't give out our number 1 straight off.
Well, I'm just going to give you that so you can argue against it.
Okay, so I to go against Gav's idea of Klopp at 4, right? I don't believe that any manager, that of the managers that were left because we've kept Joe Fagan outside the top 3, let's say, right? Any manager that hasn't won one of the 2 key trophies can't be in the top 3, right? And there's only 3 left that have won the league and the European Cup, okay? Now, I'll come back to what that is. And for me, that's why, even though I had Kenny at number 10, Kenny for me is going in. Because he was picked Fagan at 5, I would have had Kenny at 5 and Fagan at 4 because Fagan won a league and won a Champions League or a European Cup, right? Mm-hmm. For me, Kenny goes in at 4 for that specific reason. He can't win the European Cup because of what's going on at Hodgson, right? So he's caught by circumstance in terms of what's there and completely understand that. And he probably has the best team outside of AC Milan in that late 80s period, which is the greatest regret that we'll never got to see those two teams play against each other. Arrigo Sacchi's AC Milan and
I'd argue
Dalglish's.
we had a better team in the earlier part of the band than AC Milan did. I think they came stronger at the end of the 80s.
Yeah.
But I think there was European Cups there to be had if he had been playing.
It would have been a wonderful meeting of the two teams. It's sort of to carry on this legacy that we keep playing them all the time, and you have this long history that between the two teams that's there. So that's my reason for putting Dalglish at 4. I think he builds a fantastic team in the late 80s, but going back to Keith's point, he's not building from scratch. He's not building something. He's in a position of power as the best team in the country, who won the double on the team that more or less the Fagan built and had handed over to him from in 85. And then he takes that on and makes it better again, which is great. But then you have this period, right at that second period that we're talking about, where that season where he also brought us Charlie Adam, Stuart Downing, amongst others. You can't separate the two. And the three lads that we're going to, for me, that are above him, haven't had that period yet. Now, obviously, two can't. One potentially could, right? So, but at this moment in time, that's why I have him where he is. And then we can talk about the order of the three. Keith?
Yeah, okay. I sort of do get what you're saying there, Phil. He could. It's beyond his control about winning the European Cup. I think, if, but I think Liverpool would have won European Cups in that period if they weren't banned. But, he didn't at the end of the day. And I would agree at putting him in 4th as well, because I think what Kenny Dalglish done with Liverpool, the on the field stuff was good, but it was the off the field stuff Gav touched on, the stuff around Hillsborough, but even Hodgson. I mean, Hodgson happens in 1985, Hillsborough happens in 1989. It's a very, very short period. Do you know what I mean? And is there many players that were at Hodgson that were still around at Hillsborough? I don't think there was that many of them. Do you know what I mean? So it's the toll that took on Kenny Dalglish, and the amount of the amount of work that he done off the pitch for Liverpool would have an argument to have him as the number 1, to be honest. But if we're marking this solely on managerial, I'd say number 4, Kenny Dalglish.
Okay, so you're down to 4. You're left with Shankly, Paisley, Klopp.
Yeah,
and you have 3 minutes to do it.
Right.
Okay, 3 minutes to do it. So for me, in number 3, this mightn't even get past number 3 in this one, but I'd have Shankly in number 3.
Oh,
okay,
right. And the reason why I think, look, Liverpool exists as we know it today because of Bill Shankly. Completely agree with that, right? He builds something that's absolutely incredible and amazing. But he builds it at a time when any team, and this is not to disparage what he does, but any team, you're capable of building any team in England into a team that's capable of winning the league and winning trophies, right? You have Celtic winning the European Cup, you have United winning the European Cup, you've got Leeds coming, they build Leeds up from nothing. Look at what Brian Clough does at Derby, and then go for 2 years, they disappear, and then he goes to Nottingham Forest, builds them. Ipswich under Bobby Robson comes from nowhere, goes close to win the league. Everton managed to win trophies. Villa are there as well. Watford with Graham Taylor and Elton John, like they literally.
John access.
But for me, that's the difference, and this is why I rate Klopp above him, right? In terms of what he's done, and this is not recency, but to do what he did was possible for lots of different clubs because they were more or less building off a level playing field if you put a system in place. And even Busby did it with Manchester United in a similar vein, right? So it was possible in that period to have these ball work managers who just built them and became the foundations of the club and became known as the foundations of the club for what they are. So that for me is why Shankly goes in at number 3. And I'm open to being disagreeable, but that's why I have him there, because it was possible for somebody else similar to Shankly to have come along and done something similar.
Keith
I don't agree with Shankly as number 3, but I do agree with the thinking behind it.
Because is he pushed into 3 because of where Paisley takes it from 1974 onwards, and where he pushes it to, and then what Klopp walks into. And over the space of 6-7 years, what he achieves is that the only reason you'd push maybe Shankly down?
Yeah, I could see that. I had Paisley in 3, to be honest, and only for the reason that I think he carries on the good work, and I think Shankly laid the foundations. But I agree totally with what Phil said. Back then, you could take nearly any team and make them champions, and what Shankly does is takes Liverpool, makes them champions, but he sets an aura around Liverpool. Do you know what I mean? He creates more than just a team. Like if we look at Brian Clough goes to Derby, does it? He's gone. Goes to Forest, does it? They dip. Goes to Don Revy at Leeds, does it? They're gone. Do you know what I mean? There was no sustained success nearly from anybody that turned into a dynasty the way Bill Shankly did at Liverpool. So I to be honest, I'm happy enough with either way on that. I'm happy to go with Phil and put Shankly in at 3.
Okay.
If that's what he wants to do. But I just the reason I went with Paisley was because I felt that Shankly built it and Paisley carried it on.
Okay. So we're down to Bob Paisley and Jurgen Klopp. Number 2.
Well, I've already set out why I'm putting Klopp at number 2 over Shankly, right? And that gives away who my number 1 is. And I've said enough about Klopp as to why I think I'd have him having the edge, because, and it's similar to what you said. He had nothing. He came into an absolute marsh, right? It was that meme or meme or whatever they call them, where the dog is on fire saying everything is all right, everything is okay, yeah. Right? It wasn't like it was a bonfire that he walked into, and to do what he did in as quick in the amount of time it takes him to do. It takes him basically 18 months to take that team from being absolute dirt to challenging again for top 4, and then the step on, and everything is. What's amazed me about him is going back to the Rafa piece, going back to what we just talked about Evans, and even where we're talking about Souness. He's had those. They were steps. Everything has been a step, building stone, right? And every time we get to a season, he seems to achieve anything. Even the worst season we've had under him since we've won the league or been challenging, it still has that air of achievement because of how far behind they were to get them to Champions League. And that's a mentality thing. And it's like, for a man like Klopp to come in to get the club and get the fans and to do what it is, that to me, and I said, and build the club back to this pinnacle. We were a journey for players to go to. We're now a destination. He changed the club from being a stop on a journey to a destination. And that hadn't been done since the Kenny time, going back to the late 90s. It is a destination for players to get to. So that, for me, that's why Klopp is there. And Paisley, I'll give him a Paisley argument, right, to counter Keats in terms of Bill Shankly. The bit around Paisley, he was known as Shankly's tactician, right? So he was the brains behind the sort of head coach, and he was the head coach to Shankly's club manager or general manager that was over the club, and he's there present for all of Shankly's reign. So he's intrinsic in doing what they did under Shankly. Shankly goes, and the team only gets better and achieves only more when he steps away. And to be the most winningest, and I'll use that American euphemism, winningest Liverpool manager of all time in their most decorated period, and to be the greatest English manager, I'm not talking about a manager of an English team, but the greatest English manager of all time, that to me is why Bill Paisley stands alone at the top of this list.
Don't call him Bill Paisley. Because you
Bob
always
Paisley.
do that. Yeah. I knew you'd get that in somewhere. Keith, I've said Klopp is the best football manager at Liverpool Football Club since Bob Paisley. So after me being thrown there with Klopp and stuff like that, where my predictions would be or where I would rank them, I think you have to put Paisley 1 and Klopp 2.
I'd put Klopp 1. And
I
we can
see
put it down to recency, boys. But the reason that I put Klopp as number 1 is, as we touched on there, what he's had to build from absolute garbage to where we are now, and against who we've had to do it against. So forgetting about just Man City for a minute, park Pep Guardiola. You look at the resources that Chelsea have, that Manchester United have over the last 10 years, their spending power and, their draw for players and managers alike. The best managers in the world have been at Manchester United, have been at Chelsea, so we've been told. And that's without then Manchester City and Pep Guardiola coming in. People criticise Jurgen Klopp's trophy haul is a success that he's only won 1 Premier League, and he's got 3 Champions League finals. Right, he's only won 1 of them, but he's been in 3. He's been in Europa League final. He's got 3 90-point seasons. Like before him and Pep, how many managers have got 90-point seasons? And he's made this team from absolute nothing into a machine. And it's just that he's up against you know, Man City are a great team. Pep Guardiola is a great coach. I think he gets very unfairly criticised because of the wealth that's behind them. That tarnishes maybe his coaching ability, but he is excellent. But I think for Jurgen Klopp that he's going up against it, if we didn't have Klopp, you'd be looking at a situation where no other team is challenging against Man City, and how anybody would want to see that. It's only because it's Liverpool and Jurgen Klopp that they're, you know, trying to play this down. I think he's taking a team on its knees in a time that's harder to get them back up than what Bill Shankly done. I think Bob Paisley, you can't argue with the trophies and the time period that he's there for. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's not like he's done this over 28 years, 40 years. He's done it in a short period of time.
9 years, 6 titles, 3 European Cups, UEFA Cup, and 3 League Cups.
And 3 European Cups is the clincher. Do you know what I mean? If you're trying to want to make any argument for any great manager, put your Champions Leagues and European Cup medals on the table there, and we'll talk. Mm-hmm. We'll go from there. And how many managers have won it 3 times? Do you know what I mean? So I think there's an argument to say, that Bob Paisley. And my take on this is them top 3 you could put in any order, and I'd make a case for each one of them. But for me personally, I think Shankly building her up, put him ahead of Paisley's winning this, and then Jurgen Klopp for what he's had to go against. I think to judge him solely on the trophies or lack of multiple Premier Leagues and lack of multiple Champions Leagues, I think is unfair. I think when you look at what he's had to do it against, and this whole thing about not having any money to spend while doing it, I just think the fella's a genius. I think he's lifted up the club. I think he's lifted up the city. I think he's lifted everything up around Liverpool Football Club. And look, we all remember, we're not going back that long ago when you're looking at Roy Hodgson, or in some cases Brendan Rodgers. Do you know what I mean? That's not that long ago. And now we're looking at Jurgen Klopp, and people are unhappy about that. And I just can't get my head around that at all. I think he's the greatest thing to happen to Liverpool.
So are we stuck here?
We are. What's no good. But I'm willing to concede.
But you had Paisley number 1, Gav. I've Paisley number 1.
I had Paisley 1. Yeah. And I listen. I don't disagree with a word Keith says, because people will come back to me and go, "Well, you had Klopp in 4. I have Klopp in 4 because of what these 3 in front of them have done for the club and won and sacrificed in the case of Dalglish. That's why I had him at number 4. But I'd happily walk away here with Klopp going number 1 or number 2. But are we going Paisley 1, Klopp 2 then?
Yeah, for me that's my order. So I'm going that way.
Okay, well listen,
it's gonna away, but I'm happy to go.
Well, listen, it's gonna end up. It's gonna end up on the internet. This, and you know yourself, when it ends up on the internet, we'll get absolutely slaughtered. But it should come to it should lead to some good conversation. Yeah. That has been the LFC Daytrippers, ranking the Liverpool managers from 1959 to the present day. I'd like to thank bookmakers.com TV for allowing us to do this, and we'll see you soon. Cheers.